Hey everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. And it's been quite some time since we made our last video. I think 2 weeks back was when I put up the last video on introduction to swing trading. So we learned basics of swing trading and how I actually use stocks. So today I thought, why not make an introduction video to options as well? Because a lot of traders are now getting into F&O, but very few of us really understand the intention behind F&O, right? So when F&O was primarily introduced to market, so it was not for the purpose of trading. So today we have a lot of volume coming in F&O trading, but trading was not the primary purpose of F&O. Rather, F&O was introduced as a hedging instrument. So later people found more use cases with trading, and that's how F&O from a hedging instrument became a trading instrument. Before we dive deep into understanding the intricate details of options such as call option, put option, in the money, out of money, and so on, so it is very important for us to understand what is the primary purpose of options and how it works. So this is going to be the first video in the introductory series where I am going to discuss about the basics or fundamentals of options. So we are also going to have the second video in the same series where I am going to discuss more about the technical stuff relating to options. So in case if you have any friend who is starting off with his option trading journey, or if you are already trading and you want to brush up your basics, so this is the right video for you, and make sure that you stay till the end. So before we move on to the screen recording, I have a small request. In case if you are finding the content on this channel valuable, so then please make sure that you hit the like button, share this video with your friends, and also hit on the subscribe button. So once you hit on the subscribe button, there would be a bell icon next to it. If you hit on the bell icon, and whenever I post a new video, you will be notified about that. So please make sure you hit the like button and support my channel. Thank you so much. Hey everyone, welcome to this video on Option 101. So in this video, we are going to understand the basic or the fundamentals of options. So we are not going to go into any technical stuff. Rather, we are going to understand how the options actually came into picture and how it is used today. So the part 2 of this video, I'll be talking more about the technical stuff of options such as in the money, out of the money, and so on. In case if you're starting your option journey, or you're already a trader who wants to brush up his basics about options, so this is the video for you. So make sure that you click on the like button before we start off with the video. So when I talk about options, people directly jump into call option, put option, and much more. So to be honest, options didn't start with call option or put option, but options started with a purpose. So it was never meant to trade, right? So trading with options came only later on. But once the derivatives were actually introduced, it was meant for a purpose. And the purpose was basically options were insurance contracts to stock. So what do I mean by insurance to stock? So let us say if something happens to your car, you have auto insurance, right? If something happens to your health, you have health insurance. Or unfortunately, if something happens to your life, you also have life insurance, which is going to take care of your family. But what if something happens to your equity holdings or stocks? So then it is going to be a big mess because stocks is mostly related to your finance. So like how health is the most important thing for the man, similarly even his finance is also equally important when he wants to lead a good life. So what if you're holding a particular stock and the stock suddenly crashes and you lose majority of your saving? So there is no insurance which is actually covering this risk, right? So let's say you buy an automobile and if something happens to your car, so there is auto insurance company which is going to pay up for your losses. Or let's say if you have a health insurance and in case if you get hospitalized, so the insurance company is going to pay your hospital bills. What if in a stock market crash you end up losing huge amount of money? Then nobody is going to pay, right? So that's why the options were actually introduced as a insurance contracts for your stock. This was the primary purpose of option. Today the purpose has totally changed. Rather than using it as an instrument for hedging or as an insurance instrument, so we are now mostly using it to gamble and trade. So let us try to understand options much in depth with an example. So whenever we are comparing options as insurance, we will try to see how exactly they are similar to insurance. So now we will try to understand how exactly options are similar to insurance, for which we have to now also understand what are the important key points of an insurance contract, or what are the key characteristics of insurance contract, and later we are going to compare that with options. So the first characteristic of an insurance is there is an insurance buyer and seller in this particular contract. So the buyer is more or less us, who is going to go and pay a premium for the insurance. So in an insurance contract, the buyer of the insurance pays the premium, and seller most likely will be a company, an insurance company, who is going to receive the premium. So in this particular contract, what ends up happening is the buyer is going to pay certain premium to seller, and in case if something ends up happening, so there is a defined event telling that if this particular event happens, so then the seller is going to compensate the buyer, right? So there is a defined event in which the seller has to compensate the buyer for the losses. And all the insurance contracts are also going to come with something called as a defined term. So that means if this event does not happen within a particular time, then the seller gets to keep all the premium. So these are the three most important characteristics. So all insurance contracts have a buyer and a seller. So the buyer is going to pay the premium, seller is going to receive the premium, because of which the seller has to compensate the buyer in case if a defined event happens. If not, if no event is occurred within a given time frame, that the time frame can be variable, so it can be 6 months, 1 year, or 2 years. So if nothing happens in this time frame, then the seller keeps all the premium. So buyer basically loses all the premium he has paid, and the seller gets to keep all the premium. So this is the same way how an option is going to work. So option contracts again have a buyer and a seller, where buyer is going to pay some premium to the seller. So the seller is going to receive the premium. All option contracts come with a defined event. So what do I mean by defined event? So I'm just going to mark as ditto, and each option contracts come with a defined event. So what do I mean by defined event? So let's say today Nifty is trading somewhere around 19,700, right? So the defined event is you can define that I want the compensation if Nifty is falling below 19,000, or I want the compensation if Nifty is falling below 19,500. Or you can also define an event where Nifty is falling below 18,500, right? So you can define the event if Nifty is going to come below a particular level, then I want the compensation. The buyer gets to decide which level he wants to choose, but obviously, according to the level he is going to choose, he has to pay the premium. In case if he wants a compensation below 19,500, he has to pay a higher premium. In case if he wants a compensation below 19,000, since the risk is lower for the seller, he can pay a much lower premium. And finally, it is going to come with a defined term. Let us say if Nifty is not going to come below 19,000 or 19,500 within the next 7 days or 14 days or even next 1 month, or it can also be next 1 year, then the seller gets to keep all the premium given by the buyer, right? So this is the exact case how a option contract works, which is nothing different from insurance. So this is exactly how an option contract works, which is no different than an insurance contract. So I hope the similarities are clear. How options is as same as an insurance for stock, and this is the primary purpose of introducing options. But today we have made options more into a trading instrument. So before we get into understanding the technicalities of options in the next video, so now I want to cover about how the premiums are decided. So there are more or less three major factors which is actually going to define the premiums of options, right? So what I want you to know is in this video, we won't be diving into call option and put option. I am just going to give you a brief overview about options, and later in the next video, we'll cover what is a call option, what is a put option, what is in the money, out of money, and much more in detail, right? So right over here, I have opened something called as option chain, right? So this is going to look quite overwhelming. So there are a lot of things on the screen. So you might feel confused. But what I would request you to do is only focus on the right side only the column of strike and LTP. So forget about everything else. Just try to focus only on the strike and LTP. So you don't have to see on the call side, you don't have to see any of the other columns. Just only two columns to focus, that is this particular column of strike and this particular column of LTP, right? So now I'm going to teach you, or more or less try to explain how the premiums are going to be priced. So now what I'm going to do is compare option contracts with health insurance contract side by side and explain the factors which actually determine the premium, right? So the first factor which determines the premium is going to be the risk, and this is the most important factor. So let me ask you a question, right? Let us say there is a 20-year-old boy and a 60-year-old man. For whom do you think the health insurance premium is going to be higher? So is it for the 20-year-old boy or the 60-year-old man? The simple reason is the old man has to pay much higher premium because the risk associated with his health is much higher. So the insurance company is going to tell, since you're old and there are higher chances of getting any health issues, you have to pay a higher premium. So similarly, whenever the risk is more in the market for the option seller, he is going to demand much higher premium. So what exactly is the risk in case of a option seller, right? So when you look at Nifty, currently Nifty is trading at 19,625. So 19,625 is where Nifty is trading currently. So now let us say the option buyer or the person who is going to pay a premium is going to tell that you have to give me compensation if Nifty is going to come down below 19,500. So option 1 is he is going to tell compensate me if Nifty is going to come below 19,500. In the second case, let's say another buyer comes up and he tells, okay, compensate only if Nifty is going to come below 19,000, right? So the first buyer is telling compensate below 19,500. The second buyer is telling compensate below 19,000. So where the risk is much lesser for the seller. Obviously, in option B, the option seller has much lesser risk because Nifty has to fall 625 points for him to actually compensate. In the first case, Nifty has to fall around 125 points only for him to actually start compensating. So where would the premium be higher? The premium obviously would be higher at 19,500 compared to 19,000. So now we are actually going to take a look at the option chain and look at the premiums. So only look at the strike and the LTP. So when you take a look at 19,500 put option, it is trading at 60 rupees, right? So the premium the buyer has to pay for a 19,500 put option is rupees 60. Whereas, but the premium which the buyer has to pay for a 19,000 option is around 7 rupees, right? So you can see the difference. So the seller is asking the buyer to pay lesser premium because the risk associated is lesser, and in the first case is asking him to pay higher premium because the risk is higher. So this is the first and the most important concept on how the premiums are actually going to get priced. So one is risk. The second factor is going to be time, right? So let us say you end up taking a 1 year health insurance contract and you end up paying premium of rupees 10,000, right? Let us say you take a 2 year insurance contract. So this is 1 year and this is 2 year. So you might end up paying a premium of say around 17,000. And let's say I take health insurance contract for 3 years, I might just end up paying somewhere around 22,000, right? So now you can see that as and when the term is increasing, obviously the premium is also increasing. So why is this the case? So because if the time frame is more, the risk for the seller is higher, right? So before he was only giving me for 1 year. That means if nothing happened to me within next 1 year, so then he could keep all the premium. In the second case, right, so now the time has increased from 1 year, now it has become 2 years. The chances of something happening to me in 2 years is much higher than 1 year. And similarly, in the third case, chances of something happening to me in 3 years is much higher than 1 year. So since the risk for the seller is increasing, the premiums are also going to increase. So now it is time to relate this to options, right? So today is 19th of October. So 19th October 2023. So now we will say buyer and seller agree for a compensation below 19,500. So this is the price what they have agreed. So if Nifty is going to fall below 19,500, then the seller has to compensate the buyer. Now, let us try to understand this with a much better example. So now they have decided upon the event. So what they have to do next is decide upon the term. So the term can be in the next 7 days, in the next 14 days, or let us say in the next 28 days. So, which do you think is going to carry higher premium? Is it going to be the contract expiring in the next 7 days, 14 days, or 28 days? So, it is quite logical that the options expiring 28 days later are more likely to have higher premium, right? So, now let us again look at the option chain. So, you can see this particular expiry date is going to come on 26th of October, which is 7 days more, and the option premium for 19,500 is 62 rupees, so around 60 rupees. So I'm going to change from 26th to 14 days expiry, and when we actually take a look at this, so you can see when I change it to 14-day expiry, the option premium of 19,500 is trading at 88 rupees. So for 7 days it is 60 rupees, for 14 days it is going to be 88 rupees, and once I change it to, let us say, 28 days, so in this case 19,500 option has a premium of 176 rupees, right? So let me just write that down. So for 7-day expiry, the premiums were 60. So for 14-day expiry contracts, the premiums were 88. And for 28-day expiry contract, the premiums were close to around 170. So you can see, as and when the time increases, the risk for the seller increases, and that's the reason he is going to demand much higher premium. This is the second factor on which the premiums are actually decided. So now there is a third factor, which you can also say is the final factor on which the option premiums generally get decided, and that is the volatility. So what do I mean by volatility, and how can we compare this to our health insurance contract? So let me give you a simple example. So let's take two people at the age of 25. So ideally they should be having the same premium for their health insurance, right? So both should ideally pay the same premium for their health insurance. But what will end up happening is they are actually going to see their medical records. So once they see their medical records, let's say they find that this person has lesser number or lesser medical history compared to the second person. So the first person hasn't even gone to a doctor for the last 3 to 4 years, whereas the second person recently had a surgery done, right? So in this case, who do you think is going to pay lesser premium? The quite obvious answer is the first person, where he has much lesser health issues. So this is going to be the exact case with even the option contracts. So if the market in the recent history is very volatile, right? So it is going up, down continuously, then the risk for the seller is going to be higher. So in case of insurance company, so they had more risk giving it to a person who had recently undergone surgery compared to a person who had an excellent medical history, right? So once the risk increases, so if the market is moving continuously up, down, very volatile, going up 1%, 2%, and so on. So in that case, the premiums are automatically going to increase. So the 19,500 put option, which we saw at 60 rupees, can become 80 rupees with nothing changing, just the volatility in the market increasing, right? So the volatility at this point is going to be fixed. So I cannot show you how exactly things might change, right? So similarly, let's say compared to the current volatility, in the next few days, the market becomes much calmer. So instead of violently moving, the market starts to move in a very small range, right? So in this case, the option premiums are actually going to be much lesser. So instead of 60 rupees, it can also become 50 rupees. So this is the third factor where the volatility of the market is also going to influence the premium. So as you can see, this is as good as a health insurance contract, and the premiums are also decided on the same factors. One is the most important one is the risk associated. So obviously, the closer you are to the market, the more amount you have to pay as a premium. So the farther you go out of the market, so you have to pay less as a premium. The second one is the longer duration you take a contract for, higher the premium. And third one, more volatility, more the premium. So the first one is going to be the risk. So the closer we are to the market, more the premium. The farther we go from the market, lesser the premium. The second one is going to be the term. So if we take long term contracts, let's say 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months, so premium is going to be higher. Short term contracts, premium is going to be lower. And the third one is the volatility. So in this case, more volatile the market, higher the premium, and lesser the volatility, lower the premium. So this is essentially how a option contract works. So this is essentially how an option contract works. So now finally we come to the compensation amount. So how much should the seller actually compensate if something happens, right? The seller in the worst case has to compensate the entire loss to the buyer. So let us say they have agreed to a term for compensation below 19,500, and in case if the market actually comes to 19,300, right? So in this case the seller has to pay the buyer 200 rupees, and in case if it comes to 19,000, say 100, the seller has to pay the buyer 400 rupees. Let's say the market suddenly falls to 18,000. In this case, the seller actually has to compensate 1,500 rupees, right? So currently the market is trading at 19,625, and they have agreed to compensate only below 19,500. So you can see that the seller only receives a premium of 60 rupees. So that is all the premium the buyer has to pay, just around 60 rupees. And in case of any uncertain event, he's actually going to get back all the loss amount below 1,500. So this was the main reason why options were created, that is as a hedging instrument, as an insurance against your financial losses. If you are holding stocks and if the market is going to crash, so you can save yourself from the losses by buying these insurance contracts. So today the use case of options have completely changed. So people, rather than trying to have a portfolio and buy it as a hedging instrument, now they have started trading. So people sell 60 rupee option contracts and people buy 60 rupee option contracts, not with an intention of hedging it, rather than trading it. As a trader, if you believe that the market is not going to go below 19,500 before next 7 days, so then you can sell this contract and simply make 60 rupees. So you can sell 1,000 quantity of this contract, you will make 60,000 rupees, right? So similarly, if you believe that the market is going to come to 19,300, you can buy this contract and simply make a profit of 140 rupees. So you will get a compensation of 200 rupees. You will pay upfront of 60 rupees. So this way they are actually using it to trade day in, day out. And I wouldn't say this is bad. So the entire purpose is different, but we are using it for a different purpose. So this is essentially how the entire option contract works. So I haven't gone into much technical stuff like what are call options, what are put options, what are in the money options, out of money options, and much more. And this I would be covering in the second video as beginner's guide to options. So I think these two videos are more or less going to give you a fair idea about how exactly options are used in trading and what is the real purpose of option. So today we have mostly discussed on how exactly an option contract works, and we have also discussed the features of an option contract, and we have also discussed about the pricing of an option contract, and finally we discussed about how compensation works, or what kind of compensation the buyer receives or the seller has to pay the buyer. And also, in case, as we already discussed, if market is actually staying above 19,500, let's say anywhere, even at 19,501, then 19,510 or 20,000, doesn't matter where it goes on the higher end. So in this case, the seller gets to keep the entire premium of 60 rupees. That means the buyer will be losing 60 rupees. So I hope this video was insightful and you got to learn something out of this. If so, then do not forget to hit the like button, share this video, and follow me for more. So I would ask you to do a very important thing, that is, let me know if you actually want the second part of the option fundamental series, or would you want a strategy video in the comment section below. And meanwhile, if you found these videos informative, what we are putting out on the channel, please do support us by hitting the subscribe button right away. Thank you so much for joining, guys.